The basic stitch in crochet is single crochet. To do a single crochet, you're going to create a slip knot and chain any number of chains. Once you create your chains, you are going to find that you have a loop on your hook, and then you have this first chain from your hook, and then you have this second chain from your hook. In this second chain, we are going to insert our hook like so. Once you insert your hook, you are now going to do the same thing you did when you were creating chains, only this time you're going to be pulling your yarn through the chain that you've inserted into. So we're going to just yarn over and pull that loop through just that chain and then push it back up onto our hook. We should now have 2 loops on our hook. Congratulations, you just created a single crochet. Now, all stitches in crochet have to be closed before we move to the next one. We only like to work one stitch at a time so that each stitch is completed before we move on to the next one. To complete or close a single crochet, or any stitch for that matter, all you do is yarn over and pull your yarn through everything that's on your hook. No matter how many loops there are, you just pull it through all those loops. And now our single crochet is finished. To do the next single crochet, we're going to go to the next chain. So we can see that if we follow the path of our hook, we've got these little legs here. They're coming out of this big loop right there. That's the chain we just worked into. We don't want to work into that one again. So we go next to that and find the next chain. So we look for that kind of V shape right there. That's going to be the next chain to work into. So holding the chain, tensing our yarn, and using our hook, we're going to insert into this chain, pushing through, yarn over, pull that yarn through that chain, just that chain, and then push it back up onto our hook, and we should now have 2 loops on our hook. Single crochet is made. We then need to close our stitch before moving to the next one, so we will yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Stitch is now closed. You can see that our single crochet legs are coming out of this one, so we're going to go to the next chain right here. We will insert our hook through that chain, yarn over, pull through just that chain, pushing it back up onto our hook, then yarn over and close our stitch. And you just keep doing that all the way across until you have worked a single crochet into every chain. Once you have an entire row of single crochets done, you're going to see that the tops of our stitches look like a chain with V's interlocking all the way across. That's going to be how we know how many stitches we've made, and it's also going to be how we know where we're going to work the next row of stitches. To work the next row of single crochets, what we're going to do is turn our work. To turn your work, all you do is just reset it to where you will be going in the same direction you went when you went down the chain. Now, to begin any new row of single crochets, we have to do what's called a turning chain. A turning chain is what's going to get us up to the height of a single crochet. Now, because it's a single crochet, it only takes a single chain. So to do that, all we do is yarn over, pull a loop through the loop that's on our hook, and we're done. That is our turning chain. This does not count as a stitch. It's just to get us up to the height so that we get a nice smooth edge along our work. To work our first single crochet of this next row, we're going to locate right here this little gap. That gap is going to be where we're going to insert our hook. Another way to find it is if we kind of turn our work and we see that V is always right above the gap that we need to work. So, holding our yarn, holding our hook, we're going to insert our hook through that gap, making sure to go under both loops of the V that was above that gap. I'll show that again. We locate that gap, locate that V that's above it. That's the stitch we want to work into. We will insert our hook into that gap underneath both loops of that V. Then we proceed to make our stitch like we did before. We're going to yarn over, pull that yarn through that gap that we inserted into, going underneath both of those loops of that V, and pushing the new loop onto our hook. We will now have 2 loops on our hook. We will then close our stitch, yarn over, pull through both loops on our hook. Tracing our stitch here, we can see that this leg here is coming out of this stitch, this gap that we worked into. So we're now going to move to the next gap. So if we keep following along, you might see, okay, there's quite a few gaps here, but the one that we are wanting is not the one that's the lowest. We want the one that's the highest up because that's the row that we just worked. So finding that gap, locating the V that's right above it, we know now where to insert our hook next. So holding our yarn, holding our work, we will insert our hook into that gap, going underneath both loops of that V that was over the gap, yarn over, pull our yarn through that gap, making sure to go underneath both of those loops of the V. Our yarn will now be coming out of here. 2 loops on our hook. We will close our stitch like so. And then we're ready to move to the next stitch. Finding our legs of our single crochet here, we can see it's coming out of this gap, so we want to move to the next one. So if we need to stretch our work to find it, we can. There we go. That's the gap we want to work into. That's the V that's on top of it. So we will insert our hook, going underneath both loops of that V, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and close our stitch. We then just keep doing that into every gap that represents a stitch all the way across our row. A lot of times it can be easy to miss this very last stitch, especially when we're working the second row of single crochet. But a way to tell is always to look for that V. It might be a little bit farther back than the other ones were when we're turning our work, but you can see that it is right here, this loop and this loop right here. And if we grasp those loops and kind of stretch it, we can see that there's kind of a small place where we can insert our hook. That's going to be where we will make our gap. So you can use the point of your hook to help you. You can also push any yarn onto your hook as needed. Do what you need to be able to get your hook through there. And there we go. Now that our hook is through that last stitch, we're ready to yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over and close our stitch. Our second row of single crochet is now complete. To work the third row, you do the exact same thing as we did for the second row. We're going to turn our work so that we're now going in the same direction we did to create our previous rows. Grabbing our yarn and our work, we're going to create our turning chain. So we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, turning chain is now done. This does not count as a stitch, so we need to create our first stitch in this first gap right here. We locate our V, locate our gap, we know where we're going, so we will insert our hook, yarn over, pull up a loop under both of those V loops, yarn over and close our stitch. Locate our next stitch here, insert through that gap, underneath the two V loops, pull up a loop through there, yarn over and close our stitch. And we keep repeating that all the way across to the end. And that is how you do a single crochet.